Okay, so I've got some others that I wanted to share for short ideas that might want to be 30 seconds. Start out as one. So far, the only idea I have is called heavy toll. It's somebody's driving around in a sports car in a dark backcountry road. Somebody elegantly dressed, continental, could be a man or a woman, doesn't matter. High roller, and they stop, and in the middle of the road is somebody dressed up in a wizard costume. They're holding a staff and wearing a long cloak, big long beard, maybe the big wide funny hat, and the the wizard announces, "Beyond lies a heavy toll." And the person, maybe just for fun, happens to have a cigarette in each hand and a cigarette holder with a cigarette dangling out of their mouth, and maybe pull out a dollar bill and says, "You wouldn't happen to have change, would you?" And the wizard goes, "No, no, no!" And the right behind him is a guard shack with a striped pole. Basically, it's a toll booth, and uh, basically the guard comes out of the guard shack and walks up and grabs the guy in the wizard costume and pushes them off the road and gestures for the person to drive up to the gate, and the guard, takes the money, gives them change, waves them through, and uh, the wizard, disgruntled, looks back at the guard shack, then steps back out to the middle of the road, and the guard picks up the phone, and says, "Yeah, he's back again," something like that. Another one that I have, it's called Yugata, a sauce of some sort. It's basically a guy sits down at a diner table, uh, and suddenly some guy with war paint on his face and in a warrior suit, helmet, and everything, steps up and says, "Yugata!" And the guy looks up and says, "Huh?" And he says, "A sauce of some sort." And he pulls out a giant turkey baster, and the squeeze bulb is a skull. And he says, "A sauce of some sort." And he starts to squeeze the skull, and as he's squeezing the skull, the jaw opens up and the eyes start to bug out, and the guy sitting in the booth starts to scream, and he starts to climb on the seat, and then I want to have this big I want to make it look like a giant like cannon shooting out, and then marinara sauce or something hits his burger, and he's like, "Oh." And then the warrior uh, says, "You put all over the food," something like that. And then the warrior is shocked when you hear this giant, and then you cut back to the guy sitting at the booth, and he's like, and the warrior says, "You got that," and then I want it to be cut real fast, maybe cut forward, cut backwards, rolled in forward, rolled in reverse, and something as he, and have the logo kind of like in the opening scenes of Mad Max, where the title just sort of flies forward and smacks the screen, something like that. Uh, let's see here. Um, I want to have one. It starts out with a green screen, uh, camera panning around a brush fire, and then suddenly a guy opens a door in the brush fire, and he steps into a psychiatrist's office, and he goes to have word with his psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is like digital. He's talking like underwater, and the man is talking fuzzy, like staticky, like he's talking on an antique walkie-talkie. He can't understand what either of them are saying, but the psychiatrist pulls out a globe, and inside the globe is a model of the guy's head. And he opens up the guy's head as a tiny globe, and get to that one later. What else do I have? It's a guy with a guy staring at a digital clock, except you hear it ticking. You hear the ticking, and a guy staring at a clock, but it's a digital clock. And then you hear the jingling, the dingling, like an old-fashioned clock, but it's not the clock. But then the clock, it doesn't turn over for a second or two, and you realize there's this sound effects guy standing behind him who's been making all these noises the whole time, and you realize the clock's off by a couple of seconds, and the guy loses it and grabs the clock. It's sort of this tribute I want to make to just generic college movies, because those usually start with a close up of a clock for some reason. Let's see here. What else do I have? I want to make a heavy metal video. Just take any old heavy metal song, and then take some middle-aged guys, and they take some large, sharp yard tools, and they're showing off their bitchin' attitude as they're going in slow motion, chopping down weeds. Um, just for fun, maybe. I don't know. See. Um, Maybe an interview with a ventriloquist dummy. Different people go into interview with the ventriloquist dummy, and the ventriloquist dummy is sitting behind his desk, just sitting there, not saying anything, not responding in any way. And people keep walking out disappointed, not knowing what's going on, or what they just, what the heck is this? Until one guy finally walks in and finally works up the nerve to go behind the desk and reach into the dummy's back, and the dummy's like, "Oh God, yeah! Finally, somebody gets it." And basically, the dummy explains to him, I just need somebody to keep his hand stuck in my back while I do all these negotiations and everything. And uh, I want to do a longer one called "Don't Ask Al's Bowels," a case study in diabolical bowel syndrome. Uh, it's basically I had these voices in my head. Then I stopped listening to them. Then I went to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist got the voices out of my head. But then the voices didn't like that I wasn't listening to them. So the voices moved to another part of my body and started talking to everybody else. So the scene is I'm sitting on a park bench, and suddenly somebody walks up to me and sits down. We exchange awkward smiles, because I know what they want and they know what they want. They don't want to talk to me. They want to talk to my bowels. They want my they want to talk. They want to ask my bowels for advice. And if they talk to my crotch, then they hear satanic messages coming out of my intestines, and I have to explain to them that in a moment or two that's going to be a fart. And are you going to take the advice of a future fart? Uh, Uh, Boy. And another one, one from that I wanted to put back into Mime Cop, which I thought of earlier, is a copy. He finds a bomb and he's on the radio and he's talking with somebody and they tell him you got to cut the green and the red wire, and he's poking around. He says, "Yeah, the green and the red wire," and he says, "Well, I can't find the green and the red wire because they're all brown." And it's because the wires are all brown, literally. Uh, see here. And then there's two guys, maybe without the regalia, but maybe dressed up as Cossacks or KGB agents, or maybe Nazi Gestapo or something like that. They walk up to some guy in the street, dressed up in some old-fashioned civilian clothes, and they walk up to him and they say, "Show me your papers." And guy reaches in and he pulls out a pouch, and all of a sudden you start hearing stripper music playing. And I'm not sure that's and another one, a guy with a sock puppet on his hand. Uh, has to go see a psychiatrist. He and I'm not sure what the sock puppet would be for, but I want him to have a hand puppet, and I want him to find out that his psychiatrist is a werewolf, and I want his psychiatrist to admit it one night, and he has to take a psychiatrist for a walk, and his psychiatrist wants him to put his psychiatrist on a leash, take a psychiatrist out for a walk. Then a cop walks up to him. The cop says, "Is this your werewolf?" And he's got to explain, "No, this is my psychiatrist." And go through the whole. Well, can a werewolf really belong to anybody? No, this is my psychiatrist and stuff like that. I don't know what to do with I just have this idea for my psychiatrist is a werewolf thing, and this one patient has to be okay with it for some reason. Uh, and finally, I've had a few awkward situations in my life where I've been trying to get out the door because I had to go real bad, and somebody was blocking the door, and suddenly he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I have to use the can. But it's they're like, "Oh, you have yeah, it's." I'm trying to get out the door, and they're blocking the door, and suddenly I'm all worked up because I'm trying to get out, and they're blocking me in, and they're saying, you ever notice that how when somebody's going through a really bad thing, people don't give them space like they should. They always suddenly want to crowd in, and that's what I got to deal with. And it's one of those things when I got to cut a fart and I start walking away from people, and for some reason they follow me, and I gotta tell them, the reason I'm walking away from you is because I gotta cut a fart. I want to do a comedy sketch about that, and or you know, uh, I'm trying to get out the doors because I gotta use the can, or somebody says, why don't you help yourself to the snack table? And people are congregating around the snack table and they're not moving. They're just standing there, hogging up the snack table, not going anywhere. And that really gets on my nerves. And there's the host is saying, go on, why don't you help yourself to some snacks? And I'm like, I'm trying, but, people won't let me anywhere near the snack table. And, that really gets on my nerves. And I want to do a sketch about that. And anyway, that's, I've got some other stuff. Uh, Maybe some stuff that I might have written down somewhere. Uh, that's pretty much it so far. Anyway, I'm absolutely Al, and peace out.